Right. Welcome back. No technical problems at all. It's all fine. No one would have noticed if you didn't say anything, Scott.
Sorry. That's my job.
Pretty sure I couldn't hear it, but I'm pretty sure it cut off mid-VO.
It probably did. Yes, I couldn't hear it either. But the video is going to be available after the stream anyway, so you can watch it in all its glory. Landsraad. Talking about Landsraad, so let's go to the next segment. Endgame and Landsraad. So we know people have, of course, expectations of what the Endgame and Landsraad, and especially Deep Desert, looks like, and what it's for, and how people will use the Deep Desert, and how it works. A lot of those things. But I think before we go into more details and show some really exciting gameplay as well, Joel, I think it'd be cool to talk about the vision for what the Endgame is supposed to be, right?
Yeah. I think, like, going back to when I joined the project, so this is 5 years ago, right? And we were talking about what is a good survival game, like, because Dune, we were making a Dune survival game, and we were talking about what is the vision for an end game in Dune, and the kind of the goal and the idea, at least in the beginning, was like we started with, hey, like, you start by surviving in the desert, and it's that raw nature versus mankind kind of thing. It's the sun, it's the sandworms, it's the storms, but then you move into this new mode of survival, which is political survival, which is the end game of the game needs to be about these big forces, right? The Imperium is made up of the great houses, the Landsraad, the Emperor, the Spacing Guild, Chome. All of these things have an influence, and you as a player are just a small cog in the machine. But we want you to be able to feel like you're participating in this big umbrella system. And so we started there. And then we talked about, like, there's an element of, like, I think very technical game design here where we talk about player activity cycles through the week. I was looking at, like, games like Rust. Rust has their server resets, which is great for, like, people to start building up, and people really enjoy that cycle. But a lot of people also love having their stuff and not losing it. And so we talked about, like, okay, what about a place, and in Dune it's perfect, right? You have these Coriolis storms, and there's scenes in the book where the sand is just tearing apart cliff faces and ripping down the things in the desert and revealing things from beneath the sand. And so we said, okay, what if we had a map, the deep desert, and in the deep desert, the landscape changes every week. How does that affect gameplay? And then we started there and we talked about, okay, what about if there's a cycle of events that we want players to go through? And again, this is a high-level design.
We might actually have an infographic or a visual asset for that. A week cycle of...
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Cool. Fun. You guys are on top of things. I know nothing.
No,
no. Sorry, that's
not this one.
Not that one. But okay. Either way,
maybe it's not right. Maybe we didn't.
I can just keep talking.
Yeah.
Go for it. It's fine. Sorry, everyone. I know it's just boring old Joel. But like we wanted to approach this right. So we were like, okay, what if there's a map that resets and the map changes every week, so that it's an infinitely explorable space? And we worked backwards from there, and we said, how do we build a lot of our game systems towards this? So we started with the idea of, yes, the map resets. When would we want to reset the map? Let's say we reset it on the lowest player activity day of the week, right? Which tends to be a Tuesday night or a Wednesday in these kind of online games. And then we're like, okay, and then there's this activity we call scouting and cartography. And then we built a game mechanic around cartography and scouting, which I think we're going to show in a little bit. And that is, and maybe you saw it, we definitely tutorialized it in the beta, you reveal parts of the map. And then we made it so that you can save those maps and sell them to other players. So we create a loop there for players who are scouts, and that happens, let's say, in a player activity week, it happens during the low ebb. The deep desert gets revealed. Everybody needs information. How do we make information a commodity? We create a cartography and a scouting system. Then once that information is gathered, people share it with their friends and their guilds. Then they start setting up what we call a logistics plan. How am I going to control the spaces in the deep desert that I want to control? What is my guild looking for? Are we looking for spice? Are we looking for unique schematics? Are we going after shipwrecks? Are we going after the ecology labs that have been revealed? Like, what are we doing this week? So then they go set up. And then the weekend, which is when the highest player activity count is, that's when people are online. And that's where people really participate in the activities in the deep desert, whether that is running ecology labs with their friends or shipwrecks or fighting over, like, control points in the deep desert. And then after the weekend, that sorry, I should say, on top of this as an umbrella is the Landsraad. And the Landsraad are asking you to do activities that take place both in the deep desert, but also outside of the deep desert.
Exactly.
There's a lot of PvE stuff in there. And then at the end of that activity cycle, everybody votes. It sets a server-wide change, like a worldwide, I think we should say in our terminology. It changes every rule set in the world can be changed by the Landsraad. And then the Coriolis storm happens again on a Tuesday, and we start over again with a new weekly cycle. And this is kind of the vision and dream for how the Endgame should play out and how we would like it to work. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about how that we've set everything up for this to be the case, but of course, no plan survives first contact with players. So another point I would like to make is just we're a live game. We'll continue to tweak and update these things. So, but let's maybe look at and talk about it. Yeah?
Yes, let's look at some gameplay. Actually, some activities that you might be wanting to do. So we have like actually a team here that will now go into the desert.
Okay, so we've gone through the overland map.
Yeah, we're
in the shield wall, which is the southern part of the deep desert.
It's the PvE area.
Correct.
So to speak.
Yeah.
This is the PvE space.
It was important for us so that people that are scared of PvP or reluctant to get engaged with it, right, that they had a place in the deep desert that they could go to without, instantly getting killed as soon as you're coming through, like in warping in, right, gate camping or whatever from other games. And this is also where you set up your base of operations.
Yes.
The very first area, because the deep desert is gigantic. There's no water here.
Yes.
And you need to have the logistics set up, and
Yep.
like you can go there by yourself. Like I fly there on beta. I try to stay away from people because, as we said, we're not great at PvP necessarily.
People call it ratting.
Yeah,
right?
ratting.
You can go in and rat.
Oh, I'm totally
Rat
right.
raid.
Absolutely.
But just to point out one thing here, because these guys are using. So again, coming back to like how do we get towards this vision? We started with how do you build this is going to get wiped every week. How do we encourage people to build bases? Well, first of all, we created this blueprinting system. You bring the diagram of your base, you place it out, and you build it quickly, right? This is very fast. It doesn't take very long when you're with a few friends. You get a base put down, you build it up quickly. This is part of the logistics cycle of the deep desert.
And you can either bring the resources from Haga Basin and all the vehicles that you're bringing with you, or you can harvest there's quite a bit of resources in the shield wall. So you can set this up.
So this is what's happening here. We're building a forwarding base.
Exactly. I was going to say that this is obviously a forwarding base because it is kind of very boxy again compared to like the actual home bases that we saw earlier. Because this is all about efficiency, right?
Yes.
And like fitting your the storages and the all the machines that you need. Now my brain just stopped working.
Fabricators.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we made a change, or not a change. It's just the building costs are different in the deep desert, so it costs half as much to build everywhere.
Building
and
is
you get 100%
faster.
when you're breaking things down. Just because we know you're going to be redoing this every week. There's
Yep.
going to be some loss, right? So we're trying to make it easy and accessible in the ways that we can, while still keeping the threat there.
Yes.
And the intensity, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like the deep desert is a little bit about that tension as well, that feeling of like, so we're building here, it's the PvE area. I expect people to build their primary like weekly base in the PvE area and then maybe set out some logistics bases so that they can do things like refining spice. And that's where it becomes an interesting kind of like, we'll see how people play out these scenarios in the actual deep desert in the game, but this is kind of the expected behavior. This is what we hope people will do. And we've tried to build all the mechanics into place so that people can do this, right? And that's been a large part of it.
You also see co-building here. There's actually several people working on this.
Everyone's working together, right?
Yeah,
And
which is super nice.
That's the guild focus as well. Like
Exactly.
it is a multiplayer game. It's really important to make sure that people can play together and do things together. And I think the fun part in this game and this style of game is that it extends beyond like the traditional MMO experience of like we can fight things together, right? And we can role play together, but you're not building things together, you're not crafting vehicles together, right? We have those options, which is nice.
And it's just cool to see how quick you can use the blueprint system to get like a gigantic base, right?
Yep.
Even though it's utilitarian, right? But it does what it needs, and it's quite impressive.
Yep.
I know that people were also wondering that you won't be able to, copy that your setup inside. So this is literally the blueprint is for the building itself. So everything inside.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You still have to put the placeables in.
So we're behind the shield wall. I think we've just left the base now.
Yeah, we're actually
And we're
just showing a little bit of the
Yeah.
PvE area here.
so this
as
is
well.
this is behind the shield wall, and then you come out into the deep desert. And this is like I think oh yeah, sorry, behind the shield wall there's also PvE elements here. This is the PvE space.
Yeah.
So there are things like shipwrecks that you can raid. There are like eco labs behind here. So there is a section of the deep desert. I know people are really worried about doing PvP. There's a whole section here. It's 24 kilometers long, where you can actually go and like do the PvE part. And we're about to see. Well, this will take a few seconds.
We're actually
survey.
We're in the middle of
just
the survey.
surveying
So now we're surveying the land in this section, and we'll see the segment reveal itself. And this is like one of the PvE segments of the deep desert. And what you'll see here is that we've surveyed one square. And just to give some context, that's one of 81 squares within this map. So there are 81 of these squares. It's huge.
Yeah.
There
We're
are
actually also seeing the sync chart that you mentioned earlier
Yes.
as well
Yes.
come into play.
so now I don't know whose name it is, but whichever player it is crafting a. They have surveyed.
Camille is
Now they're going to
crafting a
craft
survey,
a
yeah.
sync chart.
The sync
They have crafted a sync chart of the deep desert. It tells you in the information which sector of the deep desert, who created it, how long ago it was created, so you understand whether the information's out of date or in date. They're going to share that sync chart with their friends.
Yep.
And then their friends, hopefully, will be able to switch camera perspective and see their friend apply the sync chart,
That is
which
the
saves
plan.
them having to
Yes.
explore.
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
that cartography look.
You could go out with like a
Oh.
really quick ornithopter.
Look at this. That's the deep desert over there.
Oh, sure.
To the left.
But you can go
You
out
know-
with like an exploration kit, right? That's
Yeah.
really fast. That
Yes.
You can go around. You don't have much harvesting abilities, right? And then
Yeah.
you scout the area, bring it back, and then your base can roll out with your transport ornithopters, your harvesters,
Exactly.
sand crawlers.
Depending what your plan is for today.
Yeah.
What
Which
people-
doesn't
what
necessarily
people
have to be PvP. There's actually a lot of other things,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
might bring you to
I
the
expect
deep
people
desert.
in guilds to be figuring things out and how they're going to work together to do these things. But there's roles here, right? Like again, we tried to really build this game with different roles for different people within guilds.
Exactly.
So the idea is, maybe I'm just the scout, and that's what I do because I hate, going into fights. But I go out, I bring back the information. Then people who like building bases are planning like what our logistics are going to be and what we're going to be doing this week in the deep desert. What do we need to harvest? What do we need for our crafting? Are there uniques that we're looking for? Are there specific uniques? I think one of the really important points about the deep desert is that like the unique schematics, the Imperial permits, which maybe people saw, the purple ones, they're on a limited loot setup. So you don't get the same ones every week, and the layouts of the deep desert change. Here we see the trading system. The sync chart's been traded.
And those schematics you can only make a certain amount of times.
Yeah. And now we're going to consume the sync chart, and then we're going to open our map and see that the sector has been cleared, the same sector that was sync charted. So this is kind of cool. You can create copies of this and pass it off to your guild. You can create copies and sell them on the exchange to other players as well.
Yes, and while now they're actually
the
building a
transport
transport
ornithopter,
ornithopter, we can actually quickly talk about the Coriolis storm in combination with the map, because we actually have a visual asset here that shows how they can look like on the
so
map.
we can talk about the rotation. So this is like, so let's see that we're going to see 3 weeks of Coriolis storm changes to the map. So this is week 1. And then we move to, and you can see that there's like one eco lab, a shipwreck, and a cave there, right? And a small base, and some spice blows that have been marked. And then to the next week, the layout has changed. Where
Same
things
tile.
are is different. There's a control point now in the bottom left. There's an eco lab in a different place, and a shipwreck that's been uncovered.
And there will be different loot and different schematics
Loot
that you
in all
get.
of them. And then we go one more week again. And now you can see that this is a bit larger. There's another control point. It's a different house control point now. Different spaces on the map. A couple of eco labs this time. 4 or 5 caves and the shipwreck. So you can sort of see how this changes and how this loot encourages exploration for people each week.
And that's one tile.
That's one section.
One of
81st.
One of 81.
Yeah.
But I will say
There we
this: it's a very big desert with a lot of space.
Yes.
So there's not all the tiles are that populated each week. So people aren't like, there's not 15 eco labs in every square, right?
No.
Like it's a
more
big
sparse.
barren place. And this is also like important because if we want people to fight over things, we actually need to draw them to the same places to fight
Yes.
over specific things in PvP.
Yes. So for
Right.
the ones who actually do want the PvP, they have a place to go where they know
Yes.
there's probably other players there as well.
Okay, so now we have a transport ornithopter. This is the largest flying vehicle that you can craft in the game. And this may be my favorite game mechanic because the transport
I agree.
ornithopter can pick things up. And I love it because it can pick up almost anything that is a vehicle,
Yes.
right, in the game. So
One of the things you'll see in the mid game is like the buggy is really hard to get to places, right? Even though it mines so
Yes.
much more than you can ever possibly mine yourself, but it's a pain, right, to get up on the shield wall or to get it out here.
So a good tactic with the buggy though is to use it as storage and use the transport
Yes.
ornithopter to pick
Yeah.
it up and carry it. Are we going to show an example of carrying? I guess we are.
Yes, we
Yeah,
are,
cool.
because
Yes.
what we're actually preparing for here is a spice harvesting mission.
So the team's going out to do some
yes.
spice harvesting. Cool.
So we are actually gonna
Okay.
pick up a
Yeah.
harvester.
So now we're coming out into what I call the real deep desert, right? This is actually what you think of when you think of Arrakis from the movies, right? So this is we just got the nice tutorial pop up talking about the deep desert.
Yes.
So this
perfect
is the
timing.
Arrakis that we know from the films. So Haga Basin is like and it's taking a lot of the information that we have from the books and about like the different biomes and things and making it into a truly sort of interesting PvE experience. But this is the true deep desert of Arrakis. This is the place where people are scared to go. This is where the Fremen live. We're passing outside the shield wall now. This is where the War of Assassins and the PvP is allowed to
The
happen.
spice blow.
And you can see a spice blow in the distance, which draws people from miles around to go there, right? And I do want to say, this section here, if you turn the camera right and left, you can see that we have the shield wall. This is 24 kilometers long. And you can't see people all the way along. So people who are like nervous about going into the deep desert because they're worried about, the PvP is, I think there's like an element from my end, a designed moment that we've talked about on this project quite often is like, you come to the edge of this vast ocean and you dip your toe in the water and you're a little bit scared of sharks, but you see something in the distance and you think, I can make it. I can get there and I can get back. And the first time it's scary. And you feel that tension, and the second time, and the third time, but you feel that tension, but you actually start doing it, right? And I get that people worry about toxic behaviors and ganking and so forth, but we tried to build a space where you can get away from people as well.
Correct, yeah. So I think that's really important to talk about is
Yes.
in Dune, you were given the tools to get away, right? Like if overwhelming amounts of people come after you, maybe you can't quite get away, but that's generally not going to happen. So a lot of it is more about, PvP is about controlling a point and like having to give up that point if you don't
Yes.
feel like fighting.
Fighting over things
Fighting
instead of kicking
over-
down
yes,
sandcastles.
exactly.
So on the Landsraad here, this is kind of interesting, right? So you can see the Landsraad's in the state of like, if we claim this as the Atreides, we're going to win what we call a Sisselrad. And a Sisselrad means that we're going to get the voting power for the week. So a Sisselrad is when we can complete a row. So normally, if you were Harkonnen and Atreides in this situation, you'd both be fighting over this particular control point because you really don't want the other one to win for the week. But normally, like it's kind of, you're always blocking each other and causing like the other team to have to, go back and focus on filling out a row or trying to fill out as many squares as possible. So we're trying to take the
House Haggle?
House Haggle owns this control point in the deep desert. We're in the deep desert as Atreides taking over this control point on their behalf. And you can see it's just this control point. It's a place that you have to defend in the deep desert. It'll draw other people and it will earn you points over time. It's a classic control point in the deep desert. One other thing, just if you stop for a second here, one other thing I just wanted to point out, one of the feedbacks we had in beta was about team markers. You can see our new team marker system in the game here. It's deliberately only for the 4-person groups. I will not allow this to be in the game for guilds because I want, like, especially I know people talk about Zergs. I think when Zerg guilds and there's 40 people attacking each other on the screen, if everybody can see who's in their guild, it's very easy to target the people that you're trying to Zerg. But if it's just the group, then it's much more difficult for Zergs to actually not do friendly fire.
Yeah.
And there is full friendly fire on guilds.
I mean, they can do it if they work for it, right? They can make sure everyone has the same swatches and the same armor. So there is ways to do it, but they have to work.
What you're dressed like and infiltrate.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
we didn't want to take away.
No artificial.
Yeah, like it's been one of my. Let's say I will say this is one of those things where I have had to fight with a lot of developers on this project about this. There's a crashed ship down there, by the way. It's kind of cool that you could also go loot that. But like it's like giving too much information for free to players actually limits our ability for people to have politics and intrigue. Yeah. Because if I can see your name over your head, I know who you are, right? But if I can't, if I don't know who that is, and you dress in my clothing and you walk into my base and you follow me around, it's like I might just think that you're my friend from the guild, when in fact you're just like, you know, trying to infiltrate. And we want to allow that possibility because that is Dune. At its core, that is how things work. There are plans within plans, there are groups within groups.
I remember that from early on, where your kind of law was information has to be earned.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was a very early thing.
Can I just point out that we just
Very
crossed
cool.
a server border?
Yeah.
Like our game has server meshing tech in the deep desert, and it's been a very painful technical thing to get working.
Yes.
But we just crossed a server border. You probably might not have even noticed any sort of hitching or anything because it's very seamless. And again, shout out to our technical team who've been working their butts off to get this in good shape. But we just crossed a server border from one server to another, and it's basically not visible, which is great.
Yeah, what we call like authority transfer.
Authority transfer between servers, yeah. So now we're picking up a random sandcrawler and bringing it out to the spice harvesting field. So, I mean, I love that. I love that mechanic. I think it's fantastic fun in the game, just picking things up.
The transport ornithopter is quite slow.
Yeah, it's very slow.
So it is dangerous to go out just in the transport ornithopter.
And you can, of course, sit in the harvester while being
Sure,
transported,
which
is really fun too.
You can also, I think the transport ornithopter has like 5 seats as well. So you can bring a whole little group with you.
Or have them
Kidnap other enemy harvesters as well, which is also super fun to do.
But we should talk about spice, because that's really ties the entire end game together, right? So all the tier, the tier 6 or the last like set of resources, right? Everything requires spice to craft it. So your end game gear, your end game tools, end game vehicles.
Everything end game requires spice for crafting, essentially. And also, we mentioned the Landsraad. The Landsraad has always the center square of the Landsraad requires spice to win. It's important. The Sandcrawler is like, it's not the full harvesters that you've seen in the films. Those are owned by the big houses. But as you can see here, this is like a little raid event. We just placed a thumper on the sand. We have a guy on a bike, he's riding around dropping thumpers.
You should also hear it actually on stream now. You hear
the thumpers are really important because sandworms roam the deep desert. They will be coming, and you need to be placing out thumpers to distract them away from that sandcrawler while it's harvesting spice. And you want to keep it on the spice as long as possible, just like in the book. You want to stay on the spice, earn as much profit as you possibly can. You can even see the trail that the sandcrawler is leaving in the spice as it sucks up spice into its little vacuum pack.
Yeah, so the sandworm stops being, it not stops, but it's less of a threat as you're going throughout Hauge Basin into the mid-game. But then at the end game, right, there's sandworms all over the place, and it becomes a threat again, especially when you're trying to get spice from the sands.
So you saw the sandworm just took that thumper. Hopefully our intrepid thumper places have put out more of them.
They're totally well organized. They have like several people placing out thumpers. They have like the scouts here in the air that we see as well, which is really cool to see.
Looking for worms.
Plus our transport to be ready for any kind of danger that might occur.
And so as soon as the sandcrawler, like the person driving the sandcrawler knows that they're the target of the sandworm, they need to radio in and be like, get me off the sand, so that the transport ornithopter will pick them up. But at the moment, I think we're using the thumpers effectively as a team, and this is a part of it, right? Like, this is why the deep desert is very Dune. I don't think you have this experience in any other game, and the idea was to create this. So if you are here with your guild, there's something to do and it's fun and it's interesting, but then other players might show up as well, and that's where it becomes another step, right?
So you're saying it's not just reskin Conan Exiles? Is that what you're saying, Joel?
We could talk about what the word reskin means. We could talk about, like, you know, that some of the best games in the world are reskins of other games.
So you see here, though, that there is a lot of sandworms that are popping up here constantly, which is both fun to see but also terrifying.
There is a limit to how much they
Yes.
will eat thumpers, right?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
do eventually get annoyed.
Eventually,
There's
they
like,
have enough.
I'm not that dumb,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
They'll eat thumpers for a while.
I see what you're doing here.
They have a diverse palate.
Yes. But yeah, this is like.
You also see nicely the scouts around to see like also potentially looking out for sandstorms coming in. Of course, they're kind of
Worm sign.
devastating in this particular worm signs. Enemies coming in as well.
Enemies coming in.
Yes,
Yeah. So yeah, it's this is kind of the experience of like harvesting spice in the deep desert from a large spice blow. And there are smaller spice blows like that you can come to with a smaller guild.
We also have them in Haga Basin, of course.
Yes.
Just
There's just a couple ones in Haga. Yeah, it's very limited because we wanted spice to be a rare resource that you need to go out here into the deep desert to get.
And talking about like concentration of people, like the spice blow you can see from really far away, right? 20 plus kilometers away. So you do need to bring some friends to be looking out for other people coming in.
Yep.
There's another thumper down there. So I know we've seen some comments from people that are like, well, you have to go into the deep desert to get like the highest type of gear and such.
That is not true. We have the exchange. We just showed that before, right? So you can be somebody that is making something that a person on the exchange would want, right? That goes into the deep desert to get spice or to get, like some schematics. They can go to Arrakis or Hargo Village, post that, and then you can trade it on the exchange. Or you can meet up in person and trade with
Picking
the
up the
PvP.
crawler.
I think there might have been some we can't hear it though, but there might have been some rumblings and some indication that
Yeah. We I think that they got worm sign and they need to move. We do have a known bug in the game where the spice color disappears from the sand.
It's still there. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's happening.
Oh, there he is.
That's why they
there's the
we can
grandfather
actually
one.
hear that. Yeah.
That's shy.
It was great seeing the little sandworm.
Yeah, the little tiny one on the side. You can see the scale.
Little baby like getting into the action there.
This is the ringmouth worm.
That's the ringmouth, yeah.
And that's gonna swallow everything
that
that's in the
big,
middle.
yeah.
They're like just everything there is lost.
It
and
takes
it's just
the
like
lot. But these guys managed to succeed and they can take their haul out of the deep desert today with them.
very well prepared.
Yeah.
They were well prepared.
Very well prepared. So as our crew here is now going back to actually maybe we can explore a little bit because we do actually have Imperial testing stations here as well. And I think we're actually somewhat close to one if I remember correctly. So we can maybe show that from above as well. Again, to just bring it in that there is a lot of content in the deep desert that is not just like flat out PvP, right? So we really want to
correct. And this is our high-end PvE encounters happen in the deep desert. So the eco labs or ecological testing stations, they're actually tuned for 4 players. So it's the main PvE challenge would be out here where you're going to get those unique schematics that we were talking about earlier. But you need to scout, you need to find them, and then you need to perhaps fight over them.
And work as a team. I think these are tuned towards minimum 4 people.
Yeah.
Right,
we actually showed one in our combat stream.
Yeah,
the second part.
2 streams ago. Yes, exactly. They're like kind of wave-based, kind of very different approach than the Imperial testing stations that we have in Haga Basin.
Yeah, and they're different every week.
It's the entrance to Coriolis station. And like as the game continues, as we go through live and we continue to update and expand, there'll be more things that show up on the map, for example, Fremen Seaches and things like that that people would expect to explore. So things will be uncovered. And as I mentioned, like the layouts for the deep desert, they're handcrafted. We have a cool system where we like build the layouts by hand and generate the spaces between them with the sand. So it's kind of like we fill in the gaps with the sand. But like we are building new layouts for this all the time, right? And then over time we'll incorporate more and more elements. So there'll be always something to do. That's the pillar of the game, infinite exploration, right? And that's one of the goals, is to create a space that's always explorable. And something else I'd like to say that I think is like important is we will add, like we have the DLCs and things coming for the game. We'll be adding things in the DLCs. But the deep desert will always remain something that we consider to be at the zenith of the power curve in the game. So we'll keep adding to the deep desert. So let's say that we have tier 5 items in the game and we go to tier 7. then the deep desert will start to have tier 7 equipment and items and things in it as well. We will always try to keep it on par with anything else we add in terms of power, because the deep desert really is that continually explorable space.
The central point that keeps all of the things
Yeah,
together.
we'll continue to add like stuff, and there will be like in DLCs there'll be places where people can get access to gear that is currently in the deep desert, right? When we do that, we'll also increase the deep desert and make sure that there's more things. So that's kind of the long-term goal, is to continue updating the game and continue adding this stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. To also ensure players about that. So while we actually have our team, or actually the spice harvesters, go back to on the way to the quartermaster to deploy, or like to kind of
Harvest the spice. Yeah.
give him the spice, basically.
Yeah.
give him the spice for the Landsraad thing.
Refine.
We do have an additional asset. We have actually a video from a stress test that we did with the beta last week on Friday, where we see a lot of things happening.
Shout out to the beta players.
Yes, thank you, beta players. Fantastic work on that side as well. So here, that's actually a glimpse at the stress test that we did. That's also deep desert. Lots of people together in the deep desert, a lot of ornithopters, and it's just really
All
cool
in
to
line
have like
to
that.
get their ornithopters.
to like
We were
see
spawning
that as well.
They were spawning thopters like crazy. Someone's flamethrowing, throwing bombs. Players never behave when you put them in the same space.
If I remember, that's actually Camille with the flamethrower.
We were
Not Camille, sorry, Ignacy. I mean, that was Ignacy.
the context
like
of
a
this stress
troll,
test, by the way, was like we were testing people crossing the server boundaries with our mesh servers
I
and
love that
fighting
little
on them.
ornithopter back there.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's like
Yeah.
it's just sorry, go ahead.
And fighting along the server boundaries just to see how the performance was. So you'll see people firing rockets, and yeah, it was a cool test. I think we got a lot of very useful data out of this.
Yeah.
And seeing how people were fighting together.
Also, shout out to our automation team, because they every build, right? We have the deep desert, and they have basically they deploy our automation system called Legion, and it goes and it tests all of these things, right? So it's got hundreds of ornithopters going back and forth between all the
all the server
zone
boundaries. Yep, there's a lot of testing that goes into a project like this. It's
Yes,
insane.
yes,
And the more sandboxy you get, the more things can break, and that's kind of what
Obviously,
makes it
the more
interesting.
freedom we also give to players,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
more
Yeah,
things
yeah,
can
sure.
break.
Exactly.
And like, I think I said that to you earlier as well, that like, story-driven games that are linear and you follow one story are one thing. We do have that aspect in the game as well, but I think what we at Funcom really love to do is we love to create worlds where players can write their own stories and can tell their own stories, right? I think that's such a different approach to game development.
One of the ways we describe Arrakis is a crisis generator,
Yeah.
right? So
One of
it
the four.
is
Yep.
spawning stories, and that's why like these tense locations like the deep desert are really important, because it does spawn these memorable moments that you remember, that you go
Exactly.
experience with your friends or your
Yes.
guild. You make friends, you make enemies, and that's really important to like fully experience the politics and intrigue of Dune.
100%.
The power of multiplayer, right?
Yes, like I remember, like we had a lot of really cool, before we go back to actually delivering the spice, we had actually a lot of really cool moments from streamers and players and YouTube content creators about the beta weekend or from the beta weekend. And I remember one moment, I call it the GTA moment, where one of the streamers, I think, he was harvesting something or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, he was downed.
He was downed by an enemy.
He was downed but not out.
Yeah.
And then the other one comes in and just drives over the enemy that was like targeting him, and he couldn't stop laughing. It's like these little moments that make, that create those stories that are so fun to share as well and are unique to you then. And it's like, and that is, I think, where for me, that satisfaction of really creating those worlds comes.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things, like we get a bit of I mean, it's fine. Like we get feedback like, oh, jank, right? Like, oh, being able to stand on top of an ornithopter is janky. It is, but when they asked me if we should remove that, I said no.
No.
Surfing on an ornithopter is actually
That's very cool.
Why isn't that cool? Like, why isn't that something we want? So like sometimes, we make those choices as well. Like it's like, this might look a little weird sometimes. But you know what? It's way more fun when you can do it.
Yes,
it's way more fun when you can do it.
The meta on beta might have been, surfing on ornithopters, shooting people with assault rifles.
A little bit of that might be fixed now. We fixed some of the assault rifle issues.
All right, so let's go back into delivering the spice now. Oh, actually, no, let's talk a little more. I actually wanted to ask you both a question. You actually have answered that recently in an interview, but that's not the reason I'm asking, because I plan to do it anyway. It's like, what is each of you's favorite thing in the game? I mean, you mentioned a few things that we saw, like the transport ornithopter and stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's other things that you're particularly proud of.
So survival games for me, one of the best things they do is they make the world more interactable than other genres, right? So I think the team has done a great job of like using the harvesting system. Not only does the cut array like cut up the resources and get it, but you come across these like wrecked ornithopters, and every time I come across one and I'm cutting off the wings and getting the resources from it, it just feels great, right? Because it makes the game grounded. So I would say that whole entire system there is really unique with what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I think I'm thinking about the one that I mentioned in the interview as well, probably, but like the Dew Reaper and the way that you, because I like. Look, I made Conan. We made Conan, and Conan's a bit more stock standard in the survival sense, right? You're chopping down trees and you're harvesting rocks. And when it came to Dune, we had the design principle of like make your designs fit Dune, do not make Dune fit your designs. And it was like, what is harvesting water look like in Dune? And there's a line in the book where Duke Leto is looking out a window and the sun's rising, and there's all these people out in the fields harvesting dew off the flowers, and you're like, that's how precious water is on this planet, and that's a moment that our game needs to have. And so it isn't just like the confluence. It's like yeah, it's cool, this action of like sweeping the dew off the top of plants using this little Holtzman field that drains the water up into, and like not only did the animation team and the effects team nail that, and the audio team got all of that works, but it's also like the back end. The time of day, checking when the dew harvest time is optimal, feeling like, and it's so satisfying to be out there like 10 minutes before the sun comes up and you're filling just liter johns full of water because you understood the game system and you understood the timing. All of those things come together to create an experience that I think for me it's just like, you can't have this experience in any game except Dune. And to me, that's the most precious thing, right? Like, I feel like it's so good when all those things come together. Like, as a developer, that's just the most rewarding stuff, right? And it feels good. And I don't really care if anyone else likes it because I love it so much. No, because I think it really nails it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't speak more highly of how cool that works, right? And shout out to the team who worked on it and everybody who did their part.
No, I get that.
Because games are made by teams, right? That's the other thing.
Spice.
Yes, absolutely. So we actually made it now to the quartermaster, and we are.
So we're going to deliver
the
spice.
Yes.
Try to win the Landsraad. Okay. So these
Took a while
guys,
to get back.
ask you, so you, because you're sort of you're a minor house or a minor house under the umbrella of the Atreides, you deliver Landsraad bribes to the quartermasters of the Atreides, and they make sure they get where they're supposed to go. So now we're delivering for House of Lexan, we're delivering spice. And the House of Lexan are a part of the manufacturing unit, which is where they... And so we're delivering 500 spice melange, and then they're going to make sure that it reaches them. And then that will, in a moment, change the Landsraad. So you can see how you have an impact now. So Landsraad is there under the social tab. This board refreshes every so often. So it's been a few seconds since the last refresh. Now we should be able to see our borders refresh with a certain amount of spice. Oh, we didn't go to Alexan. You're on the wrong one. You need to go to Alexan. It's in the middle.
The middle.
Yes, and then we can see that we've delivered some spice and the goal amount has gone up. So that you can see that we've increased our goal amount with House of Lexan there.
So we've worked towards gaining
so we haven't
favor.
worked, like once we hit 70,000 points, and we can do any of these activities to earn points, like the control point. We can
claim those.
we can deliver spice melange. But once we've done enough to earn that center square, then it'll flip to be Atreides and say that we've claimed it for the week.
Exactly.
Yep. So that's
great.
Nice.
So that was a little bit of a glimpse of what mid and endgame can look like. Obviously, that totally depends on what you like to play and how you like to play. There's quite a lot of options. We showed you a few of them, an approach of what can be done.
We're also jamming like dozens of hours of gameplay into like a very quick project.
Yes, 100%. Like this is very like preparation is everything, which is of course true for the game specifically as well. But before we dive into the Q&A, we are gonna take a quick look at the Mentat.